Welcome to I Said What I Said, a sports podcast giving you opinions not heard anywhere else. I'm your host, Brad Wakai, alongside my co-host, Tyson Gentry. Tyson, we are continuing these previews, and we thought we timed it out perfectly. I mean, I guess we still are all right, but we'll have the Big Ten today. We'll have the SEC later this week, and then week 0 to get everybody ready for the first college football weekend of the year. I mean, are you pumped? Are you ready? Has it come too soon?
I am pumped. It never comes too soon. I am still a little bit confused on if we count week 0 as the first college football weekend of the year. It feels like it to me, but it also feels like maybe just like a super good appetizer before, because week 1 is fun. There's not always a ton of really good week 1 games. So you get like the week 0, you get hype. This year we got some good week 1s, but in years past, it's like the season's here, and then it's a bunch of teams playing FCS schools, that most people have never heard of, and it's like, can we get to week 2?
Right. And I mean, we know college football is so back because apparently Delaware State missed their flight, and so they're nervous about getting out to Hawaii. So that the game might be canceled.
Delaware State. There's everybody listening right now is going, there's a Delaware State?
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into it. We have a ton of teams in the Big Ten, 18 teams we got to go through. If you're not familiar with the first one you're tuning into, we're going to go through each team and preview them alphabetically, just to make it easy on you guys. At the end, we have Money Makin Time, where we give out our best bets, win totals. We give out a singular conference champion as we go through it. But right now, before we get into the team-by-team basis, we just kind of give an overview of the conference. And this conference is now up to 18 teams. You get in 4 from the Pac-12 in Oregon, Washington, UCLA, and USC. And this is the other one that is competing with the SEC as really the best conference in the sport. Now, once UCLA, maybe they get back to what they were if Washington can rebuild under Fish, and we'll kind of go all through that, and we'll see what USC does. That does give them a formidable force. But what do you think about the Big Ten Conference right now as we kind of move into the super conference era?
Yeah, they should be a formidable force. They got half the teams in the country are lined up in this thing. I mean, this is probably the conference that benefits the most from the expanded playoff. If you look on Brad's head, you see a Penn State hat. He's got a Penn State flag behind him. They've been 5 through 12 like every year of the 4-team college football playoff, but they never have gotten in. We'll see. I mean, they're going to benefit the most as far as having more teams. The Big Ten seems to find itself with more of that middle ground, not like, oh, this team won 8 games, we don't know like what bowl we're going to send them to, but just knocking on the door of the playoffs. And they add an Oregon team who could have made the playoffs last year if they just beat Washington one of the 3 times that they play. The second place team in the country, for 2023, and Washington is joining the conference now. So you have the national champions and the runners up. The conference is stacked. There's just a lot of bad teams in here, man. And I think that like the separation between your Ohio States and your Oregons and your Michigans and your Penn States versus your Marylands and your UCLAs and stuff is only going to grow.
Let's get into one of those teams, and that is Illinois. And honestly, Brett Bielema has done a good job since taking over here. This is his 4th season. He's 18-19. Actually, very solid. They went 5-7 last year, 3-6. They were coming off a really good season the previous year before 2023, where they really took a step forward. Luke Altmaier's back. Tyson, he was supposed to be the guy that kind of got this offense going again. 1,800 yards, 65% completion percentage, 13 touchdowns, 10 picks. Like, didn't really blow you away, and that's the problem here. 6 offensive returning starters, 7 on defense, but overall production, 71st is back. 51.2% of their yards, 58.1% of their tackles, and 77 offensive starts. Like, as you can guess, it's been a middling Big Ten team. It's going to be another middling Big Ten team. They have the 30th toughest schedule. And if you're not familiar with the Big Ten, they just got rid of the East and West. Now, we probably should have mentioned that off the top, but that's going to benefit these teams in the East, like a Rutgers, like an Indiana, like Penn State, like Maryland. We'll kind of go through that. But in the West, I think it's going to hurt them a little bit. Like, they're not protected by some of those things where they got to hide from Michigan and Ohio State multiple times. So we'll see how this works. I do think Bielema is still a good coach, but it just feels like the cupboard is still a little bit bare, and they haven't been able to recruit at a high enough level to allow them to compete in a conference like this.
Yeah, and after 2022, like the defense, what did they allow? Like 13 points a couple years ago, something crazy. They win 8 games. It was like, holy smokes, Illinois is going to turn this thing around. And the defense just came like flying back to earth last year. I think they allowed like 30 points a game. So, yes, the defense has been good. They lose Newton on the defensive
Mm-hmm.
line there to the NFL. I mean, that's huge. You lose a couple guys, actually. Randolph leaves as well from the defensive line. I think that's an area for concern. They have transfers, and we know the schools they come from, the Florida States, the A&Ms, and things like that. But you always have to ask yourself, why wasn't this guy getting any run there? Maybe they got some diamonds in the rough. Maybe they didn't. But I'm not very optimistic about the offense. I know that that's kind of been the conversation is like the offense is going to take a step forward. We're going to talk about 9 other teams in the Big Ten here whose offenses are supposed to take a step forward. But sometimes when you're on the ground floor and you just get to the first stair, you can still look up and you got the top of the staircase has Oregon, Ohio State, and these guys dropping 50 on everybody. Illinois just doesn't have the horses, man.
Here's an interesting one in Indiana. I mean, they move on from Tom Allen, and he was there for a while and had the great year in the COVID shortened season. Who was there? Michael Penix, who was a first-round draft pick, was just in the championship last year with Washington. Who was their offensive coordinator? Kalen DeBoer, who's now the head coach of the University of Alabama. Indiana since then has been a a fledgling program getting smoked in the East Division. And this is a team that's going to benefit from not being in there. Last year, 3-9, 1-8 in conference. All signs are pointing to, okay, if they're going to be something, if they're going to make some noise, this might be it. And they just couldn't do it. So you bring in Kirk Cignetti from James Madison. This guy is saying all the right things. Like, I win, Google me. You know who I'm, Google me. Like, there is confidence. There is some swagger. There is belief within this locker room because he brought over a bunch of guys from James Madison with him who they don't lose football games. So there's a little bit of attitude going on here. I think Indiana, to get these guys, had to pay up, which is surprising considering where they are from putting money into the football department. But in the end, you also bring in Curtis Rourke. 2,200 yards last year, 64% completion percentage, 11 touchdowns, 5 picks at Ohio. All right, doesn't sound great. But before that, he was slinging it around in the MAC, like 3,400 yards, 3,000 yards, back-to-back seasons around there. You get 10 returning starters, 11 on offense, 11 on defense, and that includes the transfers and things like that from James Madison. So this is going to be interesting. You also give them the 68th toughest schedule in the league, according to Phil Steele, or in the country, according to Phil Steele. There's a chance that this team can make some noise in year one. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are with them.
Well, I would love it. First of all, Cignetti is a winner. Google him. I mean, he's 52-9 at James Madison over 4 years. And we talked a little bit about like some of these FCS transfers jumping up to the big level. It's not quite the same thing with JMU, but like some of these guys did start their career as FCS level recruits. But this is a guy that brought them to a top 25 spot in a ranking, right? At least. So will it be quick? Maybe not. I mean, he's going to set the culture. He's going to set the tone. One thing with Indiana is they haven't scored the ball very well since the 9-win Indiana year with Michael Penix, and Cignetti's going to score the shit out of the football. That's what he does. The defense is basically just going to be James Madison players. Like the only real guy returning to Indiana that I'm interested in is McCauley, Donovan McCauley, the wide receiver. He's a good player. I don't know what we're getting from this team besides the fact that I know Cignetti can coach, and that's a good spot to be. If Indiana makes a bowl game, I mean, what are we talking about? That'd be a wild turnaround for a guy who's just kind of walking in here.
Iowa, man, we're talking before we got on the show. They went 10-4 last year and 7-2 in conference with like the most anemic offense that you could ever imagine. I have no idea how they went 10-4. It's crazy. They finally fired Brian Ferentz, Kirk Ferentz's son. Kirk's been there for 26 years. I mean, this is, they do what they do. The fact that he was let go is pretty surprising. They bring in Tim Lester to be the offensive coordinator, Tyson. They are going to spread the ball out and throw it. Kirk Ferentz is like kind of had a little shit-eating grin talking about Cade McNamara during Big Ten media days. Like, well, we haven't really seen him healthy, and he looks great right now. I'm not like so necessarily sold on that, right? Like I want to see what they can do, or I want to see what he looks like. I know it's all great in the spring and your practices, but when it actually goes into a live game when he matters. We just haven't seen Cade McNamara perform very well. But Tyson, they're fourth in returning production. Offensive yards back, 63.4%. Tackles back, 77.5%. That's 13th in the country. And 154 offensive line starts, 7th in the country. Like, just write this in every year. Iowa has experience. Iowa has bodies. Iowa has a good offensive line. And if they can improve on offense even a smidge, this team could be dangerous, man. 47th toughest schedule. The Big Ten went away from the East-West. What do you call? I forget even what you call them now, like standings or
division.
Divisions. Thank you. How they divvied that up. Iowa still somehow got Western Conference type of schedule, so they got an easy one here, and it'll be an interesting thing to see how this offense looks.
So here's, I guess, my pushback to the Iowa optimism. You mentioned if the offense gets better by just a smidge, like they have a chance to not win 10 games again. I'm not going to put those words in your mouth, but like eight-win season, something like that. Right, against ranked teams last year, they got outscored like 96-0. 0. They didn't put the ball in the end zone. They didn't cross the 50 against Michigan. I mean, it was an embarrassing performance. You can't even really look at the points per game and see, oh, they scored 15. Because then you have to think, well, how many did Cooper DeJean score? How many did this defense score? Special teams, all that stuff. I mean, this offense is a touchdown and a field goal offense. I don't think Cade McNamara is going to come in here and light the world on fire. I don't think he has to be totally fair. They still have LaShawn Williams and Caleb Johnson toting the rock, and that's something that any offensive coordinator in the country would like to be able to rely on with that offensive line. Do you think Cade McNamara plays the entire season, or do you think Brendan Sullivan gets any love?
I think Sullivan will play. I just don't.
Me too.
What's the track record been with McNamara? So
I mean, look at what happened to Michigan. I mean, like, this is as he leaves and all of a sudden they're national champs, right? So are we excited to watch Iowa football? No. Do we know what we're going to get? Pretty much.
Maryland is a team that I think it's on the opposite, Tyson. Like, we knew what we were getting before when you had Talia Tagovailoa. Like, he was going to throw the rock around. They're going to spread this thing out. You had some high-scoring offense. Defense wasn't necessarily going to be there. Okay, well, what do we do now that he's finally gone? Bring in MJ Morris, transfers from NC State, got in a couple games his freshman year, redshirted. Last year he played a little bit, and he ultimately had to leave. Okay. So what is that going to look like without your all-time leading passer in program history? I think there's going to be some real questions here. But they're coming off a good season. 8-5 overall, 4-5 in conference. Mike Locksley, this is a tough place to win, especially coming into the Big Ten from the ACC. Lack of resources, lack of recruiting footprint, and to be 29-33 playing in the Eastern Division is impressive. But here's where you're going to get hurt. Offensive returning starters, 94th in the returning production overall. Only 41.5% of their yards are returning. This could actually be a defensive first team with 8 returning starters back and 64.3% of their tackles, which is 45th in the country. But listen, 45 offensive line starts, that's scary. You got to be able to move the ball. You got to be able to score to win in this conference. And the 34th toughest schedule doesn't do them any favors. So I think it's going to be a tough year for Maryland.
No, and one thing that I think is like disingenuous when we talk about Maryland a little bit is to not mention that they were in a game with Ohio State until late, and they were in a game with Michigan until the third quarter. Everybody was in a game with Michigan until the third quarter. But this was a team that like was close. They were close enough to like make the big boys sweat, and that was encouraging. But it kind of feels like we're doing the same thing that we did 2 years ago after they won 8 games 2 years ago as well. And it was like Maryland might be able to take the step forward. I agree that they're going to probably end up being a defense first team. But this isn't the old Big Ten. This isn't the just stop the run and you're going to be fine Big Ten. There's some new dogs, in the yard here that love to sling the rock around the field, and they lost like the entire secondary. So I'm interested to see how that goes. I don't have high hopes for Maryland this year, but I've learned enough from Mike Locksley over the last couple of years to just know that he's not like a certified winner. He doesn't print us money, but he's a pain in your side. So if you are thinking about like fading Maryland week over week, he's going to sneak a couple in on you.
Michigan, the reigning college football champions, 15-0, went 9-0 in conference last year. Won on the crazy ending against Alabama, and then just completely physically dominated Washington. And that was what they did all year, is just physically dominate. There is a change of guard here now. As everybody knows, Jim Harbaugh is now in the NFL. Sharon Moore got the job after his 4 years of being 4 games, as the interim head coach. So he's coming into his first season. Jesse Minter, the defensive coordinator, is gone. They bring in Wink Martindale. Interesting type of juxtaposition. I'm curious to see how that works. Alex Orji, I believe, is going to be the starter.
For how long?
Dual threat guy. Not quite sure about his ability to throw the football, but he has experience. Yeah, but Tyson, they go from like 7th in returning production last year, or 4th, whatever they were. It was single digits. They're now 117th in returning production. 36.6 of their yards are back on offense. Only 53.4% of their tackles are back. And after they had a majorly experienced offensive line, only 53 offensive line starts are back. Plus, they get the 15th toughest schedule in the country. It's based on who they play, according to Phil Steele and his metrics. It is a tough first year for them. Now, we talk about the lack of returners and things like that. That's why you recruit well. Like for some schools like Georgia and like Alabama in the past, we like, okay, yeah, if you lose some production, at least you have 5 stars behind them. That seems to be the case when Harbaugh was there. Moore was recruiting a lot of these guys, so you didn't necessarily see a fleeing of talent. But I wonder just how much that is going to be impacted by the fact that, it's no longer Jim Harbaugh there.
Yeah, I think the whole Michigan season boils down to, like, is Sharon Moore that guy? The offense is his. The offense is his. Well, when he was the head coach, they ran the ball the entire second half. They won the game. I'm not hating on the fact they won the game, but this is like his real chances at being a head coach resulted in wins, which is good. But the way they looked isn't going to win you a bunch of games based on the way this Michigan team is going to look. We talk about them. Everybody remembers Michigan as like this overwhelmingly physical running football team. They didn't average a ton of yards per carry. They didn't have many explosives, right? It was just like over and over and over again, they're going to beat you down. But this year, you lose all 5 starters on the offensive line. You lose a J.J. McCarthy. You lose Roman Wilson. You lose Blake Corum. I don't know where that leaves you. I don't think many Big Ten defensive coordinators were losing sleep over having to cover Roman Wilson, like necessarily going in like on a Friday night. They're not staying up late to figure that out, but it's still a really good player. It's a guy who went in the 3rd round in the NFL draft. I'm kind of over the Donovan Edwards thing. I think that he gets a lot of love, and I don't see it necessarily. I think he's going to be a good player. I would kind of pump the brakes on like this breakout year he's about to have, being 2nd or 3rd in Doak Walker odds, all of those things. I'm really excited for Colson Loveland, the tight end. But again, this is about Sharon Moore, and can you keep it going? Because Harbaugh might be in the NFL. They are finding ways to rope him into every single. Paul Feinbaum's out here throwing shots at this guy. I'm the reason he's not coming back for week 1. All of this stuff. There's a lot of drama around this Michigan football program, and I'm more concerned about it with a first year true head coach versus a certified winner like Harbaugh.
Yeah, I think especially people are like, well, he did it for 4 years, or why do I keep saying that, for 4 games. Well, it's a difference when Harbaugh is able to do things and just not be there on game day.
Yeah, during the week,
you're running the program now.
All the installs, all of it. I mean, it's different. And to go from having that insulation with the players, like, hey, I'm not the head coach, but like you got to listen to me too now. I'm running the show. We got to see how people are going to respond. I think that this is probably closer to the 2019, 20, 21, 22 Michigan Wolverines than it is 2023. Last year was special, and it's okay to have a special year once in a decade.
Yeah, and winning the 3 Big Ten championships in a row, that's Michigan. They can do that. Yes. But again, that was from Harbaugh taking them from getting punked by Ohio State for all those years to all of a sudden now you're beating Ohio State and then you win a national championship. So as more the guy we'll see, this will be a tough first year. Let's move over to the little brother in Michigan State, another first-year head coach in Jonathan Smith. 4-8 last year, 2-7 in conference, moved on from Mel Tucker. So Jonathan Smith comes over for Oregon State. Now at the time, it was seen like, oh, very smart, very good decision. Michigan State is a disaster right now. Like this is not necessarily a conference or a program that you're like, yes, I'm excited to take over. But they're in the Big Ten. They're going to get money. They're going to get the media rights. And so, if they want to get involved in the NIL stuff, I'm not quite sure. I'm not too familiar with Michigan State. They're going to have an opportunity with all the TV rights and cash coming in. But Tyson, my goodness, 115th in returning production, 33.7% of their yards back. That's 104th in the country. 53.5% of their tackles back, 85th in the country. 31 offensive line starts, 124th in the country. This is bare. It is barren. Aiden Childs is their quarterback, follows Jonathan Smith from Oregon State. He was a freshman last year. What do we know about him? Now he's going to have to play big boy football in the Big Ten. The offensive line sucks. The kid might get killed. 22nd toughest schedule. This has disaster written all over it.
No, I mean, Derek Harmon's gone, Barrow's gone, Mangum's gone. From a defense, like those are the best defensive players. From a defense that allowed 31 points. And like Oregon State might have played a Big Ten brand of football, and that's all well and good. But when you're playing a Big Ten brand of football, against Colorado, it looks a little better than when you go line it up with Ohio State or you go line it up with Michigan. This is a team that's severely lacking in talent. I'm honestly not casting much judgment here for Jonathan Smith if this year doesn't go well. I'm fully expecting like a total work in progress. This has to be, go from ground zero and work your way up. Especially, I mean, college football moves so fast that like it feels weird to say like we're not very far from the Mel Tucker stuff. Like this is a school in general. Really, Michigan State has had a ton of problems in the athletic program. Going back now 5, 6, 7 years, and things move so fast you kind of forget about that. From like an institutional point of view, they really could use just a hard reset, and I think that's what Jonathan Smith is supposed to bring. Let's see if he does it.
I think it's a good hire. I mean, we talked about this, I believe, back when it happened. I mean, we both liked him at Oregon State. That's a tough place to play or a tough place to win. And he did it constantly while he was there. So can he do that here in East Lansing, who at least does?
And that's something to look for Michigan State a year from now. But losing some of the guys they lost on the defensive side of the football, especially those that left after spring practice, it's interesting. It's an impossible situation.
And there was a lot that actually did too, which was surprising. So let's get into Minnesota. If we're high on Jonathan Smith, what do we think about PJ Fleck? Now, some of his results are hard to argue with. 8th season here, he's 50-34. It's not like this is a program with rich recent history. I know they, were the first program, I think, to ever win 3 championships in a row in the modern era. And so, I mean, okay, you got something to hold your hat on, but this is a tough place to play and win in the Big Ten. But they went 6-7 last year, 3-6 in conference. Feels like the magic that he had a couple years into his tenure is gone. They are brought in Max Brosmer, from New Hampshire, FCS level guy. I mean, he chucked it around. 5 years there, over 8,000 yards. We say it all the time. Step up in class. We have no clue. Now you go into the Big Ten. This is going to be tough. But I'd say that to say 39th in returning production. Offensively, 45.1% is back. But if Brosmer can play well, okay. Defensively, though, 71.2% of their tackles are back. That's 25th in the country. That's something to keep an eye on here, is if they can have a good defense and figure things out on offense, that could help them. 79 offensive line starts, 67th in the country. All right, it's something there. You're not barren, but you're not necessarily stacked on that side. But 37th toughest schedule in the country. Just still feels like PJ Fleck selling snake oil, man. I don't know if you're getting warmer on him or not, but I'm curious your thoughts here.
I've never been high on PJ Fleck. I don't think I ever will be. I don't know. It's a me problem for sure, but the dude just rubs me the wrong way, and I apologize to PJ for that. But one thing with this team, dude, Darius Taylor is a beast. Like, this is a running back. He played 6 games last year. I think he ran for just shy of 800 yards. I mean, that's something to look at here. If you're Minnesota and go, well, we got Max Brosmer in here, we don't have to worry so much about turnovers. Like, he's going to play smart, and then we're just going to lean on the run game. I am a little bit nervous about the defense. I know that's a bit sacrilegious here when you're talking about Minnesota football, PJ Fleck football, all that stuff, but they kind of went as Tyler Nubin went last year. It feels like the safety. They lose him to the NFL. He was one of the better players in all of the Big Ten, I thought. I mean, the dude just kind of jumped off the screen, and I'm interested to see how they're going to replace that because he returned 8 starters, but the best one's gone. And let's see what everybody else looks like. They kind of find themselves in a really weird spot here because now with 18 teams, are they the best of that third tier, like the final 6? That's not a great spot to be, but that's kind of where I have them penciled in, 11, 12, somewhere in that range.
Nebraska, a coach that we really like in Matt Rule. First season last year went 5-7. I mean, considering how unlucky Nebraska's been to win 5 games last year with Jeff Sims as your quarterback, pretty impressive. Now you bring in Dylan Raiola, just a stud 5-star freshman. Was originally committed to Georgia, was the number 1 overall recruit. Oh, all of a sudden he flips to Nebraska and he gets bumped down. Funny how it works, recruiting. Thanks, guys. No, it is funny to see that, though. But listen, second year on the Rule. This is the time when they're supposed to win. They have done it when he's at Temple. First year is a building thing. Get the culture right. Second year, you win. Same with Baylor. All of a sudden, Nebraska's sitting here in year 2 of Matt Rule with 15th in returning production, 59.1% of that back on offense, 67.8% of their tackles back on defense. That's 35th in the country. And this is the most important thing for me, 152 offensive line starts. This could be a good offensive line, something they have not had. That's 8th in the country when you tally up all the starts that their linemen have had. 50th toughest schedule in the country. This is a team that can be sneaky, and we've been saying that, right? The difference between Scott Frost and Matt Rule is Matt Rule is actually a good coach. Like Scott Frost was a disaster. And so signs are pointing that something can go good here, or that they could be able to perform. Raiola is an upgrade. I don't care if he hasn't played a snap yet in college. He's an upgrade of what they had last year at quarterback.
Yeah, and I'm just going to list off like a couple stats that I found that are reasons why I'm high on Nebraska. 2 teams scored over 24 points on the Nebraska Cornhuskers last year. It was Colorado early, and it was Michigan. Michigan scored over 24 points on everybody just through sheer will, and Colorado was scoring 1 billion points at the start of the year. Besides those 2 teams, I mean, it was lights out. There's a group that held teams like 18 points a game. But this is really it, Brad. We talk about like regression to the mean and positive regression all the time. They had a minus 17 turnover margin last year. They lost 5 games by 1 score. This was a team that was actually pretty close to, like, you look up and you go, Nebraska has 9 wins? Like, with this group, what is going on? I fully expect Matt Rule to get this thing rolling. We said it when he got hired, like, this is a multi-year project, and once it, like, you don't want to be left at the station once the train takes off, and I think that this is the year, where they're not, like, I'm not expecting Nebraska to make the playoff, but I do think this is the top 25 team in the country.
You want to talk about a crazy story. Northwestern last year was nuts. I mean, David Braun, okay, this is his second season. They went 8-5 last year, 5-4 in conference. Their preseason win total was 2.5. This is a team that seemed reeling, or a program seemed reeling after Pat Fitzgerald got fired, right? Like, are they going to be able to even play? What are the coaches thinking? Like, they're walking out with Justice for Pat or like free Pat shirts. And all of a sudden, this team who everybody said, I mean, I don't know what the talent level is here. They have all this drama. They go out and win 5 Big Ten games. I mean, it was crazy. It was super impressive. But, yeah, good point. They have Mike Wright as the quarterback. And if you're not familiar with him, remember, he was supposed to be the guy at Vandy. Fell apart a little bit there, transferred to Mississippi State last year. Now he's in another program. Never been a Mike Wright guy. I think it's going to be tough at Northwestern, just with the lack of talent around him. I guess he kind of was familiar with that at Vanderbilt when playing in the SEC, but it's not like they necessarily blew anybody away. Looking at Northwestern overall, 51st in returning production. On the offensive side, 41.9% of their yards are back. That's 82nd in the country. But defensively, 68.8% of their tackles back, 30th in the country. That's good for a team like Northwestern. You got to be able to stop people. Got to give yourself a chance. And the offensive line-wise, 78 offensive line starts back, 69th in the country. Not necessarily something that inspires a lot of confidence, right? Like, I think if you're Northwestern, you have to win the battle in the trenches. And if you can't do that and get yards on the ground, or if you can't give your quarterback time to try to make some plays, I think it's going to be tough. And then you play the 25th toughest schedule in the country. All signs to me are pointing that this thing's going to come back to earth a little bit.
Yeah, and I hate to pour cold water on Braun and the boys at Northwestern, but like they're combined 4-20 in 2021, 2022. Different head coach, but we were Pat Fitzgerald guys. I don't think that there's like many people in the country who would look at Pat Fitzgerald and say objectively a poor coach. So the turnaround last year was unexpected. It was a bit crazy, and sometimes like you can play on that emotion, and nobody believes in us. We're going to do this, and we're going to go out. We're going to win 8 games. We're going to beat Utah in a bowl game, which is it's a good bowl win to add on to this whole thing. I just think this is closer to that 4-20 mark over that 2-year span than it is to an 8-5 roster, to an 8-5 program in general. Like Northwestern is going to finish at the bottom of the Big Ten, and that's okay. Like this was supposed to happen a year ago, and it's just going to happen now.
Okay, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this portion here, and the meat and potatoes of this conference. Ohio State is the favorite. They went 11-2 last year, 8-1 in conference. 2 losses were to Michigan and Missouri in the bowl game. Ryan Day's in his 7th season. I mean, he's 56-8 in his coaching career. It's ridiculous. It's unbelievable what he's accomplished here. Yet he's on the hot seat from some fans because he can't beat Michigan. I mean, it's the expectations here are pretty absurd when you think about it from that standpoint. They went out and got rid of Kyle McCord, brought in Will Howard. Last year at Kansas State, 2,600 yards, 61% completions, 24 touchdowns, 10 picks. Now, if you heard us do the Big 12 preview, we talked about Kansas State. There were a lot of people at that program who said Avery Johnson was going to win that camp battle. So Ohio State, they think they upgraded. They like Will Howard. They think he's going to run this offense. Chip Kelly's new offense, by the way, that he's coming in to be the offensive coordinator. And they think that they upgraded a quarterback. Now you have a ton of weapons. It's crazy the amount of talent here. 47th in returning production. I mean, offensive yards wise, 29.1% is backed. It's 107th in the country. Okay, you lost your quarterback. You lost Marvin Harrison. You lost the starting running back. That's going to affect that. But tackle percentage, 67.6 back, 37th in the country. And 103 offensive line starts. That's 37th in the country. That's what I'm looking at. That's what I care about. This defense is loaded. The offensive line is going to be really good. They struggled to block at times last year. And Tyson, it's not like they drew a hard schedule. 35th toughest, according to Phil Steele. And they look like locked and loaded for this season.
Yeah, and I think, we talk a lot about running backs on the show, especially in these previews. And I know that I've been guilty of hyperbole with some other teams in the past. Ohio State does have the best running back room in college football. And I know that hurts to hear with that Penn State hat on and the flag behind you. But with Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson, I mean, who cares if Devin Brown can play? Who cares if Will Howard is even running the team? You're going to win 8 games off the strength of those 2 guys. Brad, a weird kind of juxtaposition that I think Ohio State finds themselves in right now, at least on the defensive side of the football. They're going to have less draft picks than we're used to seeing, at least in the upcoming NFL draft. There's a ton of sophomores and freshmen that are going to go really high. But I think that this is the least NFL ready group that they've ever had. I also expect this to be one of the 5 best defenses in the country, maybe the best overall statistical defense in the country. I think this might be a case of not addition by subtraction, but I think things will be a little easier for Ohio State this year, not having some of those NFL guys, not having some guys. Look, man, I don't want to offend any Ohio State fans out there. Y'all have had some people making business decisions for a while on these edges, playing linebacker, all of this stuff. They're really good players. But when Donovan Edwards is one-on-one with the safety and the safety's going top 5 and top 10 in the NFL draft, and all of a sudden he's whiffing, taking up grass, it makes you wonder. I think that this Ohio State team is poised to be who they were supposed to be a year ago. And you mentioned Ryan Day's crazy record. And you mentioned Chip Kelly. Brad, these guys don't win big games, and that's the scary part. I know, Ryan Day beat Ohio State. I don't care. Ryan Day can't beat Michigan. He will this year. It doesn't matter because at the end of the day, the boogeyman of college football is probably going to be waiting for you. You were very close to winning a national championship, but you had to play Georgia. And I think you're probably going to find yourself on a collision course with them this year as well. Can Ohio State get over the hump? Is Jeremiah Smith the next in line, right? Is Emeka Egbuka finally going to take this next step? Feels disingenuous because he's been awesome, but is he going to be the guy in this offense here, or is it going to be one of the young cats? We got to see what it looks like. Ohio State will be playing in the college football playoff. It's just a matter of, are they going to be the 1 seed, or are they going to get it at large?
Well, that's the question, right? And that's what we're going to talk about when we get into Money Making Time, because we have our picks. But there's going to be some. We're going to see it, man. They open with Akron and they open with Western after that. Western Michigan. What are they going to show? We're at least going to see what this thing's going to look like, because it is an all-star unit. Their NIL spent. I think they said they didn't announce it. Other teams have said they think it's been a $30 million overhaul to get these guys to either stay or to come in with the pursuit for a national championship. Now, I'm not trying to come out here and have my opinions on it because I know people think it's shaded or slanted a little bit because I have the Penn State stuff and I'm an alumni of Penn State or alumnus, but it is a little bit ridiculous if that somebody can go out there and do that, right? But if you're going to be able to do that, that's the current rules, and you're able to do something. You got to win, like Tyson's kind of alluding to. Day hasn't done that. Chip Kelly hasn't done that. That's the two most prominent leaders in this program right now, the defensive coordinator not included. But there's some questions that they're going to have to answer. You're supposed to be the guy. You're supposed to be the program that goes out and accomplishes this and wins. Are they going to be able to do it? We'll see. But let's get into Oregon. They're the second
NIL
favorite.
Money.
You talk about NIL money. Holy smokes. Their report coming out that Phil Knight just basically has given this program a blank check and that they can go out and spend NIL. It's, again, you want to talk about ridiculous. At this point, there's got to be some oversight. I mean, come on. It's crazy that you can do that. They're able to do this. But let's talk about the football stuff as it is now. Dan Lanning, third season. It's been impressive. We talked about Ryan Day's record. This guy's equally as impressive. 12-2 last year, 8-1 in conference. The only two losses coming to Washington. Beat him one time, you're in the CFP. Couldn't do it. But 22-5 in his career. They bring in Dylan Gabriel to be the quarterback. 3,600 yards. Tyson, he's going to be the all-time leading passer in the history of college football with a good season. And he's probably going to have a better than a good season. He's the Heisman Trophy favorite. 69% completion percentage, 30 picks, 30 touchdowns, 6 interceptions last year at Oklahoma. The guy's an experienced player. We know what he can do. Now, again, here's something that's interesting with Oregon. 61st in returning production. You look at the offensive side of the ball, only 33.7% of their yards are back, 103rd in the nation. Don't worry, right? Bo Nix got drafted. The guy is on the Broncos with them, a wide receiver that I'm blanking on. A couple different weapons. Yeah, Troy Franklin, thank you. But you get Tez Johnson back. You get some other studs back. This is going to be fine on the offensive side of the ball. 144 offensive line starts back. 9th in the country. That's what I'm looking at. Can you build and compete in the trenches in the Big Ten? This is not the Pac-12. I know they were able to bully in the Pac-12. That's fine. But when you play Big Ten teams every single week, you got to be able to survive in the trenches. And that's what I'm looking at there. 144 offensive line starts. That's a positive to me. And defensive tackles, 58.8% back, 64th in the country. Also bring in some others through the transfer portal, yada, yada. We know the Oregon situation. 41st, toughest schedule. This sets up well for them to make noise. Where are you at on this football team?
Oregon's going to be really good. They're going to be really good. I think Dan Lanning is walking into the Big Ten as the best coach in this whole thing. Like that's what I think.
Wow, I think that's a little disrespectful to Ryan Day. I'm not a Ryan Day backer.
Look, I think that Dan Lanning is the truth, and I think that like his last couple seasons have shown that. And one thing that I'm interested to see as on the Dylan Gabriel line of thinking here. If you think back to 2022, we saw a little Bo Nix injury at the end of the season, and then all of a sudden some of the things went away that they like to do as far as quarterback runs. The average depth of target last year was really low. Dylan Gabriel is going to sling that thing. Dylan Gabriel is a one-year rental, and they know that, and I don't think they're going to be afraid to kind of put him in harm's way, so to speak, in order to get wins. I mean, Evan Stewart and Tez Johnson is a disgusting 1-2 punch at the wide receiver room. I think Jordan James is going to become a household name here in the running back room. The defense, they restock with not just like some transfers, but like NFL guys, right? I mean, Harmon that we just talked about from Michigan State, Jabbar Muhammad from Washington, Caldwell from Houston, Kobe Savage from Kansas State. They just went and plucked, like, give us your best player, and we're going to take your best player and your best player. And that's what a lot of the other teams did too. I think that Oregon plays just a different style of football a little bit than some of these teams are used to seeing on the offensive side. And team speed-wise, I think that could put some stress on an Ohio State, on a Michigan, on a Penn State defense that they're used to coming downhill and getting after you. Oregon's going to go sideline to sideline. I'm not saying that any of these teams can't adapt to that. We've seen it when they play these SEC schools and they hold their own, right? Because SEC, they like to go sideline to sideline because they're used to everybody wanting to come downhill too. It's just this year, I think that Oregon is going to be special. They're going to have a better defense than people think. And we know the offense is going to be nasty. I think personally that this is a 2.5 horse conference. We'll get into alphabetically here to who I think the half is, but Oregon is positioned very well to walk into the Big Ten to win this bad boy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any doubt about it. I think if you look at the newcomer across the country who has the best chance of winning, it's Oregon. Just the way that you laid everything out.
Utah erasure.
Yeah, the way they've been able to build, maybe the way they'll build, and I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I agree with kind of your thought process there. How does it look when they first come in? Could catch some teams off guard. Let's get into Penn State. So my alma mater. They're the third favorite in this conference. And I know a lot of you are kind of shocked about that. Every single year, they just lose to Ohio State and Michigan. Every single year, a lot of teams lose to Ohio State and Michigan. That's the way it goes. Penn State's trying to get over that hump. Haven't been able to do it so far. Will getting ready to the divisions help them? Probably. Does it open up the expanded college football playoff to help them compete for a national championship and a one-off? Yeah, absolutely. Looking at this team, Franklin's in his 11th season, 88-69 overall. Again, been successful here. Aller's coming off a season where he threw for 2,600 yards, 60% completion percentage. That's something that needs to improve, in my opinion. A lot of throwaways, a lot of dumps into the ground. But 25 touchdowns, 2 picks. People are acting like this guy was horrible. I mean, it's crazy the discourse around him. Like, oh, he's just awful. I mean, you just don't put up Drew Aller and you just put a different guy up and you say 2,600 yards, 25 touchdowns, 2 picks. You're going to be like, wow, that's pretty good. But
you wouldn't have kicked Sean Clifford out of school if he had 25 touchdowns, 2 picks.
So, listen, he's got to be more explosive. He's got to be more willing to throw interceptions, put the ball in harm's way. We know that. But, God, Tyson, 29th in returning production. Listen to this on offense. 88% of the yards are back. That's 8th in the country. That's with losing Theo Johnson, who was the starting tight end. Who got drafted in the NFL. It might actually be. Keandre Lambert-Smith transferred out, the leading wideout. So that's fair. But Julian Fleming replaced him. So that's if you're bringing in transfer yardage, can look at it from that aspect. Defensively, 72.5% of their tackles back. That's 23rd in the country. So you're going to have guys ready to go. From the Penn State perspective, the reason why they rotate so many guys is to give them experience. And so when this eventually happens, you graduate, go to the NFL, whatever the case may be, you're able to come in and not be overwhelmed. Here's what I'm concerned about from the Penn State side. 45 offensive line starts. So 112th in the country. Anytime you have to replace 3 players to get drafted in the NFL, that's tough. You have to replace your best offensive lineman the old-fashioned way. That is hard, especially at left tackle, especially playing teams who can get after you in the trenches like Michigan, like Ohio State, like Oregon. Now, Penn State doesn't play Michigan this year, but just using them as an example. So they're going to have to get up to speed quickly on the offensive line. Now, the gift is they play the 49th toughest schedule. Like I just said, they avoid Michigan. They host Ohio State. They avoid Oregon. They welcome in Washington in a down year, welcome in UCLA in a down year. Really the toughest road games, Wisconsin, USC. This is a time that James Franklin's got to prove, hey, if we just lose to Ohio State, let's say at home, because that's going to be a tough game regardless, and we take care of business elsewhere, we're going to be in the college football playoff. And that's the expectation for the Nittany Lions.
Yes, and that's one thing that I'm genuinely a little bit concerned about is Penn State, and you know this better than pretty much anybody. They're really good at almost meeting expectations. And now it feels like the goalpost has shifted to just do what you always do and you're in. And I'm a little worried James Franklin's going to find a way to fuck that up because he's found a way to fuck up a lot of really good things. Brad got through that whole thing without really shouting out Andy Kotelnicki coming over here from Kansas, without really shouting out Tom Allen coming here as a defensive coordinator. Losing Manny Diaz is a big deal. Like we're not going to just sweep that under the rug here, but this is a talk about talent. I mean, is it the best linebacking room in the country? Again, maybe. Like it's close. The safeties are awesome. You got to replace both corners, but Penn State has shown us time and time again that they're really good at recruiting for that stuff. I want to know what the offense is going to look like. Like, are they going to come in here and run more of a Kansas style offense where Kotelnicki's coming from? Probably not right away because Brad, it's the same problem we've run into for 100 years at Penn State. Who are you throwing the football to? I know that Julian Fleming comes in, and I know what's the tight end's name, the returner?
Tyler Warren.
Yes, and
Stud.
Nick Singleton is a really good player. Katron Allen is a really good player. But when you just have to have one and you need a 30-yard play, I personally think Drew Aller can give it to you. I need somebody to get open.
Yeah, and so the hope is that it's going to be Trey Wallace. Got to stay healthy, man. And that's the problem. That's been his problem his whole career. The guy can get open like crazy. I mean, he was doing that against some NFL DBs. If you're not on the field and you're not available, that's, your best trade's being available. He hasn't been able to do that. I mean, if Harrison Wallace is going to be healthy and he plays this year, he's going to get drafted in the NFL. I don't know what round it's going to be, but he's got the size, strength, speed combo to do it. Got to be healthy. If he's the number one out there, this offense is going to look a whole lot better. Now, say they're going to run the Kansas offense, Tyson. That's been this whole install that they've been trying to do throughout the offseason. Don't know exactly how it's going to translate with the whole sleight of hand and Drew Aller needing to run thing. But we've talked about it before. He's more athletic than people give him credit for. It's just being willing to do that in a game. So that's what I'm curious to see. And they're going to have some games, open up with West Virginia. That's a tricky one. I'm kind of scared about that as a Penn State fan. But, there will be some opportunities to really let this offense eat.
This is concerning to me because last year you came in just all hot and bothered about how Penn State was winning the national championship. You're much more measured this year, so maybe Penn State, they deserve more than just a half horse in this race. Maybe it is a three horse race.
I wish I was delusional enough to say they'd win the national championship, but I did say they were going to win the Big Ten, and I guaranteed it, and that was a Charles Barkley guarantee in the end.
That was tough.
That was tough. All right, let's get into Purdue. Now we're kind of getting out of the top three. This is one of the worst odds teams to win the Big Ten. I mean, it's Ryan Walters' second season. He went 4-8 last year, 3-6 in conference, which actually is pretty impressive, I got to say. But a lot of this, Tyson, is going to rely on Hudson Card. 2,300 yards last season, almost 2,400.
How old is this dude?
So this is his fifth season of college football.
Okay.
So, yeah, last season, this is at Purdue. 59% completion percentage, 15 touchdowns, 8 picks. Like, not a lot to write home about there. But this is what intrigues me about Purdue. 33rd in returning production, 60.6% of their offensive yards are back, 60.4% of their tackles are back, and 165 offensive line starts are back. Like, this is supposed to be the team that if you're going to make some noise or if you're at least going to go over the expectation, maybe go to a bowl game, this should be the one to do it. But Tyson, God, they were hitting the 6th toughest schedule in the country. They couldn't catch a break.
No, and it feels like another year might go by without somebody getting Purdue'd, which is a horrible thing to happen to college football. But, like, are we really going to sit here and say, like, Purdue could make a bowl game off the back of Devin Mockabee, like, running the football? Because that's the shot, right? And, we liked Hudson Card 10 years ago, right? But, like, now it feels a little different. I think that Purdue, there's a reason that they're so far down the odds board. Like, best case scenario, this team makes a bowl game. Worst case scenario, they don't win a game.
Rutgers is an interesting team, man. I mean, they've gotten their teeth kicked in since they joined the Big Ten. And I'll just say this. I think that they were given a gift by the schedule makers from the Big Ten saying, hey, guys, thanks for the New York market. Thanks for all the money. Thanks for all that you've done getting your ass kicked by Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Michigan State when they were good. All those years, we're going to throw you a bone. Like, they don't play anybody good in this conference this year. That is at least expected to be contenders. Greg Schiano is back for his 5th season. What do you know? 7-6 last year, 3-6 in conference. Tyson, it feels like there's a little momentum here. Now, I'm concerned about this. Gavin Wimsatt was a good quarterback last year. I don't know why they didn't go out and try to upgrade if they're going to get rid of him or just have him return. Instead, they bring in Ethan Kaliak-Manis, the guy from Minnesota, who is a disaster, the Greek rifle. Everybody's excited. I kind of drank the Kool-Aid a little bit till I saw him play, and I'm like, oh, no, he sucks. 8th in returning production.
That's what's crazy is he won the camp battle.
I know. He knows the offense, I should say, because it's Kirk Soraka, I believe, is there, and he was there at Minnesota. Yada, yada. So that was one of the reasons. But Tyson, 8th in returning production. 83.2% of their yards are back. That's 14th in the country. 75.8% of their defensive tackles are back. 17th in the country. And then 123 offensive line starts, 16th in the country. This team is set up, man. This is a team I think can go to back-to-back bowl games.
Well, dude, they got like at least one all Big Ten defensive lineman, an all Big Ten linebacker, and then probably two all Big Ten guys in the secondary. So don't look like when you look up and you see at the end of this year that Rutgers might have won 8 games. Don't be surprised. Like, this is a team, nobody talked about it, but it's really hard to score. It's really hard to move the ball when you played Rutgers. And yes, they just threw the ball into the ground every play last year. And it was kind of overshadowed because Iowa's offense was so bad that it was like, wow, Rutgers is pretty good. They look like the Chiefs next to these guys. They got to score the ball. But what do we know about Rutgers, especially under this coaching staff, this leadership? They just want to punch you in the face. Like, the score is secondary almost to the way that they want to play football. And they finally have enough horses, it seems, to make a little bit of noise. I'm not predicting Rutgers to win the Big Ten. I'm not saying Rutgers, is going to win 9 games, but they're probably going to beat somebody. Like, I would say they're going to beat one of the better teams in the conference, but they don't have to play them. But like, going into this year, there's a chance that Rutgers finishes way higher on the overall Big Ten board than you would have ever thought.
UCLA, first year in the Big Ten, and they have to do it without Chip Kelly. Instead, they internally hired Deshaun Foster, whose opening presser was such a disaster at the Big Ten Media Day. Now, nice guy. Just, you want to talk about unprepared. I mean, holy smokes, that's the guy leading the
Big
Ten
he's never had a
program
conversation.
Now.
Like, he didn't know how conversations work.
Ooh, it was tough. Ethan Garber's their quarterback. Now, people are getting on Drew Aller for being conservative. This guy, 1,100 yards, 67% completion percentage, 11 touchdowns, 3 picks. That's in 6 starts. All right. I mean, push the ball down the field a little bit. I don't know. And there was a weird quarterback situation with the whole Dante Moore thing last year. They just couldn't really find out what was going on. But UCLA's in some trouble, man. 96th in returning production. 56% of their offensive yards are back, but 38.3% of their tackles are back. Surprisingly, their offensive line's in good shape, 101 starts returning, which is 40th in the country. But Tyson, they're handed the second toughest schedule in the country according to Phil Steele. I think this is going to be a disaster.
The second toughest schedule in the country, and they have to play on a coast far away from like everybody but 4 teams or 3 teams in the conference. It's a lot of travel for UCLA. Brad, you mentioned they were conservative last year. Who's calling the plays?
Oh, who is brought in now?
Eric Bieniemy.
That's right, Eric. Well, he's going to let it go.
They are flinging this thing around the field. They are not going to run the ball, which is going to be a bummer because TJ Harden is a good player and somebody that I think deserves a little bit more love when we kind of talk about some of these good college players. This is going to be a disaster, dude. Like, this is Eric Bieniemy walking into a room with guys who can't throw the ball, guys who can't catch the ball. What are we doing? They're cleaning house at the end of this year. I don't think, Deshaun Foster is going to make it through. I don't think Eric Bieniemy is going to make it through. It's going to be tough. I think UCLA is going to be real close to the bottom of this conference.
Let's get into USC. And last year, you want to talk about just a complete disaster. 8-5 after starting off 5-0. Just holy smokes. They completely crumbled down the stretch. Lincoln Riley's now in his 3rd season, 19-8. Let me just put that out there again. In the Pac-12, they're 19-8 with the number 1 overall pick.
Heisman Trophy winner.
Crazy. They're going to turn it over to Miller Moss. That's been announced. That was expected. He flashed in the bowl game last year when he threw 6 touchdowns. It'll be interesting to see what they do on offense, right? Was maybe Caleb Williams not, working and operating in the Lincoln Riley system? People have been saying that. Is Miller Moss just going to go out there and run it because he's not the playmaker type that Williams has been? Well, didn't we see Kyler Murray? Didn't we see Baker Mayfield go off script all these years? Okay, for some reason I've seen that so many times in the Lincoln Riley system where go ahead and go off script. So, all right, if that's what we want to do. 104th in returning production here for the Trojans. 21.8% of their yards back on offense. That's 121st in the country. Tackles back, 59.1%, 61st. 71 offensive line starts, which is 75th in the country. 3rd toughest schedule. That is brutal for USC coming into this conference. But the most important thing of all is that they fired that slap, Alex Grinch, and brought in a real defensive coordinator, stole him from UCLA. And that's that. How many wins is that worth? Because holy smokes. Apparently,
3.
Tyson, they found out this word tackle in practice. They're shocked that they're tackling.
That seems backwards to me. That doesn't seem like Lincoln Riley probably even appreciates that that's going on. But you mentioned Lynn here coming in from UCLA to be the defensive coordinator. UCLA's defense was like the bright spot over the last couple of years. I think they were number 2 in the Pac-12. He's obviously going to have more talent, more depth, all of that stuff with the USC team. But Brad, I might argue that the biggest thing with USC has been the biggest thing USC now going on year 3. The program's run by a loser. Lincoln Riley doesn't win when it's time to win. Lincoln Riley only wins when he's playing UCF at home, right? When he's playing Oregon State at home. I don't care about Miller Moss, and neither does Lincoln Riley, because if he has one misstep, it's the UNLV transfer, Mayava, or however you say his name. I apologize if I got that wrong, but like we saw Lincoln Riley take one look at and go, oh, I'm starting Caleb Williams. And it worked out. It's not going to happen like that every time. Like, yes, the guy has a phenomenal track record developing quarterbacks. You know what else he has a horrible track record at? Every other position on the field. And it's going to be the same thing again. Like, how many times we got to do this with this team? This year, the win total is like in the realm of possibility. Like, we're not talking about, oh, this is a 10.5. Like, easy, we're smashing the over. This year it's set at 7.5, and I wouldn't be mad at you if you wanted to take it. Lincoln Riley doesn't win football games. Welcome to the big show, bub. You ran away from the SEC when it was announced Oklahoma was going there. This might be harder. You did it to yourself.
Let's get into Washington now. Coming off of a heartbreaking loss in the championship, I guess it maybe necessarily wasn't. I mean, they got pushed around, but you get to that point, you lose, it's tough. Still a really good season for him in the final year of the Pac-12. But Kalen DeBoer's gone. He goes to Alabama. You hire Jedd Fisch, who I think is a really good coach. This is a guy back when I was in school at Penn State. I wanted him to hire as the offensive coordinator to be the OC at Penn State. He's coming out of Arizona where he did a fantastic turnaround. They bring in Will Rogers. He committed to the previous regime, stayed. Mississippi State transfer. He's just thrown for a ton of yards under the tutelage of Mike Leach, rest in peace. Last season, not so much on offense. It was a different type of philosophy. So we'll see what he does here. But 132nd in returning production. 6.7% of their offensive yards are back, Tyson. That's 132nd in the country. 43.2% of their tackles back, 110th. And yeah, after the offensive line won the best offensive line in the country award, they only have 8 offensive line starts back. 133rd in the country. By the way, they get handed the 21st toughest schedule, according to Phil Steele. I think this is tough, man. This is going to be a disaster.
Jedd Fisch, we love you. UW. If you listened to the show at all last year, I was very high on UW coming into the year. I was high on Washington throughout the year, all the way to the end. There was just something kind of magical about really just Michael Penix. It was like, this dude is going to find a way to win these football games when they shouldn't win them. They're underdogs against Oregon every time they play. They're underdogs against anybody that they play that was perceived to be more physical than them. Brad, they didn't have any NFL guys on defense last year, and they lost the 3 highest graded ones that they did have in Pro Football Focus going into this year. It's going to be tough. This is a Washington team who on the defensive side of the football especially lacked some physicality last year, and you're relying on transfer. And I don't want to besmirch Zach Durfee. The dude's coming from Sioux Falls. That's a huge step to come up and say, okay, now it's you versus Donovan Edwards in the hole. Good luck. And it's going to be tough. Jedd Fisch, all-time finesse job here to get the bag that he got going to this job, knowing full well that it's going to be a really hard thing as you go to the Big Ten. I mean, you mentioned Will Rogers, but they get Jonah Coleman from Arizona, Jeremiah Hunter from California. Like, they're good players. But these are good players in the Pac-12 or the old Pac-12. And dude, look at who they play and just see if you can even find me a win post-November. It's going to be hard.
Now let's close out here with Wisconsin. Luke Fickell's second season. They went 7-6 last year. He won the bowl game. That whole weird situation with when he came and took over, and I don't know, that was weird. But 7-6, and this is the time he's supposed to take this program to the next level, right? Okay, second season in charge. If there's still some lingering questions kind of going on in the scuttlebutt about what's taking place in Wisconsin, because he comes in instead of the old ground and pound, he wants to change it to the spread idea and the spread concepts. Well, what happens with that? The players that were previously recruited before don't necessarily fit what you're trying to do here. So this may be a longer rebuild, or at least a longer build than originally anticipated. They bring in Tyler Van Dyke, who a few years ago was the hot name on the block, right? He looked great. Oh my goodness. And last year, 2,700 yards, 66% completion percentage, 19 touchdowns, 12 picks at Miami. All right, but made mistakes, made too many mistakes in inopportune times. So can Luke Fickell kind of fix him? Can he do and work his magic? We'll see. The good news here is they're 49th in returning production. That's a good sign for Fickell in year 2. Offensive yards, 43% back. That's 79th in the country. Could be a little better, but still solid. 67.6% on defense back in returns in terms of tackles, and 102 offensive line starts, 38th in the country. Now, where do those linemen background come from? Is it the ground and pound? Is it a little bit more these kind of flex spread type of guys here? It'll be interesting to see how this adjustment goes, but 20th toughest schedule in the country, didn't do themselves any favors there, or didn't get given any favors there. Oh, I'm kind of torn on this because I think Fickell's a good coach, but I think he kind of did it to himself with just trying to change everything immediately, where I think the success is going to come a little bit later than everybody was anticipating when he took the job.
Dude, they have like no depth. If anybody gets hurt on this Wisconsin football team, they're in big trouble. And that's all the way across. Like the only person they might stand to lose is Tyler Van Dyke, but that's because Braden Locke's been in the offense. He understands how this is supposed to work. You mentioned like they didn't get given any favors with the scheduling. They're playing Alabama. Like this is really hard to think that they're going to beat Alabama, that they're going to be better than some of these top teams here in the Big Ten. There are question marks all over the place. I'm a Luke Fickell guy as well. I'm interested to see what, he gets his fingerprints on this defense, and we get I think Tackett Curtis from USC transferred in here. Wisconsin is a bunch of new faces basically, but at the end of the day, what Wisconsin does better than almost every other team in the country is just produce monster running backs. And last year, Braylon Allen was a little bit disappointing as far as like stat lines go. But again, you mentioned they kind of changed. Hey, you're 240 pounds and you're really good at running the football. Want to try catching it? That's a horrible way to run your team. I think Malusi comes in this year and kind of picks up where Braylon Allen left off running the football. They are, again, in the middle ground of the Big Ten. It just so happens there's 16 teams now. So they go from 4 to 8.
18 teams now.
Or 18. Holy smokes.
Right?
Yes.
Because we thought it was 16, and then we went through our research, and we're like,
fine, they're 9. Wisconsin's now 9. Look at what you did.
All right, let's get into money making time now. This is where we're going to give out our picks, our win totals, and our one conference champion. So I'll start it off. Ohio State, I'm going to take a plus 150. I was talking with Tyson a little bit. It's kind of an emotional hedge for me because it's always just a jab in the heart whenever these guys win. Because one, spending $30 million to win a championship in this sport, it's kind of sickening a little bit that they're allowed to do that. And it's like, well, why can't everybody be Ohio State? It's like, well, nobody has that type of money. But I digress. This is going to be a really good football team. They have done what they needed to do to make this football team this roster. So I'm not going to take that away from them. But there are a ton of expectations. Are they going to be able to live up to the hype? They're going to be able to stand up to that pressure. I actually think they're going to be able to do it, Tyson, because it's an all-star team who's all set on one goal. Like, they're coming in to win. They're not coming in to go to the NFL because they could have done that. A lot of these players could have gone and had opportunities. It reminds me of Michigan last year where they're all set out to win a national championship. I think it starts with winning the Big Ten. I know it's short at plus 150, but I think they're the best team in the country, in the conference.
I see your $30 million, and I raise you $30 million. Give me Oregon to win the Big Ten here. Sitting here at plus 220. The lines are going to change again. So, like, if you get these right now and you go to bet it yourself and it's plus 205, don't get mad at us. We're sorry for doing these so late. We're not professional bettors. I think that Dan Lanning is the best coach in the Big Ten. I know you took some exception to that. He'll prove it this year. They're going to win the Big Ten championship. There
we go. I love Dan Lanning. I do. I'm curious to see how this thing looks. That is for sure. So Tyson and I will go through our win total bets now. I'm going to start with an interesting one. I'm going to take Indiana over 5.5 at -138 here on FanDuel. Maybe I'm drinking the Kool-Aid too much here on Coach Sig, but I mean, we talked about it before. This is a schedule that is set up for success for these guys. FIU, Western Illinois, at UCLA, who think we could be a complete disaster. That could be 3-0 right there. You just need 3 more wins. Well, how about this? Host Charlotte, host Maryland, who we have no clue about, at Northwestern. Okay, I'm not saying this team's going to start off 6-0. Let's go 3-3, maybe worse. At worst, they're 2-4 at worst. Nebraska, who we have question marks still about. Wisconsin or Washington, they host, who could be horrible. At Michigan State, we have no clue how they're going to do. And then you finish with Michigan, at Ohio State, then host Purdue. Indiana could be better than Purdue. There are a lot of winnable coin flip games on here. I think you're seeing that with the schedule difficulty rating that Phil Steele's given them. And then I just like that you're going to have somebody coming in who is a proven winner and guys who believe that they can win from James Madison. It's a little different era here in Indiana. I'm going to go over 5.5.
I love it. You're rocking with Sig. I'm cutting this one real close, Brad. And I got Maryland under 6.5 here to start, sitting on FanDuel right now at -142. I don't know what we're going to get from this football team. I would not be surprised in the slightest if Maryland makes a bowl game. But, Brad, if they make a bowl game, it's only 6 wins, and I'm fine. I don't have to worry about anything. It does feel a little bit to me like maybe the last couple of years at 8 wins was a little mini golden age for the Maryland football team, and I think they kind of come tumbling down. We've seen a lot of Maryland teams without a quarterback, and I think we're going to see another one.
I can't believe I'm doing this to myself, and I have to root for this team, but I'm going Iowa over 8.5 at +152. Now, normally we talk about this. It's about 70 cents for a win, and so they're saying Iowa's going to win 8 games. Tyson, I'm not sure that's the case. Like, again, they went 10-4 last year with a horrific offense. I expect this offense to at least be a little bit better. Now, I saw your point, and I recognize your point that the defense could be a little bit worse, but 8 returning starters, 77.5% of their tackles back. Like, I think it's still going to be a solid unit. Then you play Illinois State, Iowa State, who we're high on. Go listen to our Big 12 preview. So that's going to be a coin flip. That honestly could determine this win or loss here. But then you host Troy, go at Minnesota, bye at Ohio State. That's probably a loss. But then you play Washington at Michigan State, Northwestern, Wisconsin at UCLA, bye, finish at Maryland, Nebraska. If this offense takes a step forward, the defense stays good, I think they're going to win 9 games. This is a juicy one at +152. I'm going to take a shot on it.
It's about time. We've been shitting on Iowa for years on here, so it's nice to give them some love. My next one here, I'm going Oregon over 10.5 wins. I understand that number is huge. I think they're going to win the conference. Let's run through their schedule. Start off with Idaho. Really good FCS team, different class. Boise State, same thing. Good group of 5 team, different class. Oregon State, they're stomping on. UCLA, they're catching them at perfect time. Michigan State, and all of that is before they play Ohio State at home. And I think they're going to go into that game undefeated. We're getting college game day there. But then post the Ohio State game, right? It's Purdue, Illinois, Michigan, and Ann Arbor. That could be interesting. Or Alex Orji might suck, and we don't know what we're getting from Michigan. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's fine. And then it's Maryland, Wisconsin, Washington to round it out. It's really going to come down to that Ohio State game. But, Brad, they're playing at home. Everything is peachy keen. This is an undefeated football team who's going to take a top 3 seed into the college football playoff.
Oh, I'm hoping this is all peachy for me. I'm taking Nebraska over 7.5 at -134. And I feel like this is a risky play here. I think we're going to be living on the knife edge here. I'm believing in Matt Rule, and it's kind of like death taxes and bet Matt Rule in year 2. So that's what I'm rolling on here. But they've had so many close losses the past decade. Like, the whole thing, you can't keep getting away with it. Like, the losing side of the variance just can't keep getting away with what they've done in Nebraska. Like, it's sickening. And I'm not a Cornhuskers fan by any means. I don't have no clue how those guys just aren't losing their minds over what happens every single year. But home UTEP, home Colorado, home Northern Iowa, home Illinois. Tyson, that's 4 games at home to start. Then you go at Purdue for your 5th one. Could that be 5-0? Do we have to search for 3 later?
It's homecoming against Rutgers.
It's homecoming against Rutgers. Then you go at Indiana, at Ohio State. We think UCLA is a disaster. We're not sure about USC. And then you finish against Wisconsin and Iowa. It's going to be tight, but if Raiola's the real deal, they're going to do this thing, and we're going to look at Nebraska like, oh my God, Matt Rule did it again.
Yes, I am in total agreement there with you. It's not the way we have the board set up, so I'll save it, but I have a feeling I might have something similar in the slip here. Washington under 6.5 wins. That's my next one here, minus 132. I wish it was something different. I wish Washington was going to come out here and win 10 football games. I don't see it with this version, this roster, this team. Again, like the confluence of talent that they finally had last year, and they had a quarterback to throw the football. I mean, every wide receiver on the freaking roster from a year ago is now, we're getting camp reports in the NFL like, wow, this dude is good. And it's like, yeah, we know. We don't know that about everybody else that's left. We don't know that when you lose a guy, toting the rock. And look, they didn't run the ball a ton. Dylan Johnson was a good player, but he was markedly better than everybody else that they had that they tried to hand it off to. I think this might be some sort of unmitigated disaster in the sense that this is a team that this is a TCU setback. They've lost the national championship. This is what happened.
I'm with you, man. The fact that we're getting this for minus 132 is insane when we look at the lack of talent that's returning and just the lack of production. Sure, Fish brought some people with him from Arizona. Come on, this is a step up in class. We say all the time there's a difference between the FCS and the group of five. There's a difference between the group of five and the lower power four. And let's just say it. There's a difference between the Pac-12 and the lower power four, as we call it, as we consider it, I guess, and the Big Ten and the SEC. It's just a step up in class. And now you're asking this team to do something similar to what they did last year with a new head coach, with a schedule that's 21st toughest in the country, as they play teams they haven't faced before and they have to travel. I'm with you. Under 6.5, minus 132.
And we talked about this a little bit. USC under 7.5, minus 115. I think the schedule is hard. I think the coaches suck. I don't think they win enough football games. I think that we're going to get some gaudy numbers. But again, I don't care who's calling the plays. I don't care who's running the defense. At the end of the day, the bones are the same. This is a Lincoln Riley football team in the Big Ten. We finally get it, brother. And they don't have Caleb Williams. They won 8 games with Caleb Williams in the Pac-12. I'm supposed to sit here and think they're going to win 8 games in the Big Ten with Miller Moss? What are you talking about?
I'm taking Rutgers over 6.5 at plus 100. They won 7 games last year. The 7th was in the bowl game. But I am nervous about the 8th and Kaliak-Manising, I will say. But Tyson, they might just tell him not to throw the football.
Yeah,
they just might run it. I mean, just Kai Monagai running to death with 123 offensive line starts. They are returning production. They are tough. They're physical, and they play a conference schedule that signals that they're going to do this thing. Host Howard to start, then host Akron. They got to go to at Virginia Tech. That honestly might be the toughest schedule on their schedule. Toughest game on their schedule, because then they host Washington, go to Nebraska again. Nebraska could be bad. Host Wisconsin, host UCLA, at USC. God, if they haven't figured out how to tackle, how many yards is Monagai running for? Holy smokes. Then they get a bye and close with hosting Minnesota, at Maryland, hosting Illinois, then at Michigan State. Come on. This could be a big season for the Scarlet Knights. I'll take a shot on them at plus money to win 7. I
love it. And we just shout out Greg. That's all we need. That's like, we just need him in the national spotlight here. I alluded to it a little bit. I'm on Nebraska over 7.5 with you as well. I think you laid it out perfectly. I don't have too much more to add. People, it's like betting Brian Kelly to cover his over. You just bet Matt Rule year 2. Take the money.
Well, I'm going to close it out here with a homer pick, and I have to do it. Penn State over 9.5 at minus 172. I think they're going to win 10 games. Tyson and I were talking before. Can we just pick them to win 10 games? You actually can, and it's plus 240. So if you don't like laying this much juice, I think Penn State could probably get there for you at the 10 game mark, because it feels like that's what they do all the time. But I think this team's going to be really good. And I'm an alumni. I don't want their alumnus, I guess is the correct term, but I don't want that to kind of cloud the judgment of them talking about it here. But I do listen to just content stuff that's coming out of camp. I think this offense is going to be the real deal. And it's a complete change what they've done under Mike Yurcich. It's multiple. It makes you think. It puts the players in best position to succeed, unlike last year. I'm a little concerned about the offensive line. I think that's going to be mitigated by an explosive running game that doesn't rely on them to just completely move around other players. Like there's going to be different looks. It's going to confuse the defense. So that kind of calms my nerves a little bit. But if they can get past West Virginia, we're talking about this 9.5 right now. Host Bowling Green, bye. Host Kent State, host Illinois, host UCLA, go to USC, bye. Go to at Wisconsin, host Ohio State, host Washington, at Purdue, at Minnesota, host Maryland to close. I'm seeing Ohio State loss for sure. I think they can beat USC on the road. Wisconsin's going to be a tough game, but let's say they lose all 3 of those, Tyson, and that's 9. I have a hard time believing that. I think maybe that you get a loss at Wisconsin, loss against Ohio State, and maybe at USC. One of those 2 games could be a loss, but I don't see anything else. So I'm comfortable laying the juice here.
Yeah, and I wish that the Penn State team total was up for the week 1 game against West Virginia last year. I think we might have ended with the Big Ten, which allowed us to give out like, oh, Penn State is smashing West Virginia to start the season. This year we don't have the team total up, but I am confident that they're going over in week 1. I don't even care what the number's set at. To round it out here, Brad, I hate this, but it's Purdue under 4.5, minus 178, massive number. It's disgusting. I don't really want to play it, but one of these teams, of these 18, 6 of them are their line is set at 4.5, and it's like I just got to pick the worst one and hold my nose. I think Purdue is the worst team in this conference. I think it's close with them, and there's a couple others that we went through, but it's a disaster in Purdue, and it's not getting any better, brother.
It's going to be tough, especially with all these teams, man. That's for sure. So in an 18-team conference, 6 bets on the win total, 1 each. Tyson, there's a few that I just didn't pick that I'm eyeing.
Yep.
I don't know if I'm going to get down on it or not, but I feel like we talked about Northwestern. I think both of us were down, so I'm eyeing that. And if I do add it, where can they find it? Yeah, UCLA.
It'll be in the Discord app. The group name is I Said What I Said. We'll let you write in it. We got a whole bunch of different sports that you can, talk to us about. We got a general channel in there. We are getting very close, people, to the NFL starts in a couple weeks here, where week 0 is like right around the corner. We gave out Brad's giving out baseball picks left and right, whatever you want, it's in there. We had a little Dricus Duplessis win in there this week as well for the UFC. So hop in there. You can tailor our picks, you can fade us. We got a long shot parlay in there. I just want somebody, please put in a $5 slip for 100,000 so I can tail it. That's all that I really want. So if you hop in there, that'd be fantastic. And we're playing around with the idea of doing some more fun stuff, especially during football season. So you don't want to miss that. As far as Brad and I will do this, and we can say it now. I mean, we will do a player prop bet for every primetime game in the NFL, and we'll try to roll this thing over. Last year was a little bit more rough. 2 years ago, I think we ended up, we started with, was it $12 or something like that, $10 total. We peaked at 719 before taking a little bit out of the account. We're going to do it again, and we're going to do it fast. And this year we're going to try to get a little bit more into like DFS stuff. So all of that is going to be one place and one place only. You won't hear about it on the show. It will be in the Discord app.
Yes, perfectly said. Like, subscribe, and share the show on the way out. If you're watching on YouTube, smash the like button. If you're listening to podcast form, appreciate you doing that. And send us a 5-star if you haven't already. Again, Tyson kind of laid it out. We got a ton of content coming. A lot of that is going to be in the Discord because we can only do so much here. But we are going to have you covered here on our channels, whether it's podcast or YouTube. So make sure you stay subscribed so you don't miss a single thing during football season. We're going to have a different schedule this year. So that's going to be something. We want to give a little bit more up to date on the gambling stuff. It was a little too rough last year where we were trying to beat some early blinds. And again, we're not pro bettors, so we're trying to figure some stuff out. So we're going to workshop this when we get out of here, but this is a long way to say we're excited about the football season. We're excited to be on this journey. We've gone long here on the Big Ten show. If you haven't listened to our other previews, go check those out. We'll be back with SEC preview and then our week 0 college football betting episode. So until then, guys, peace.